Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing as well as analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped up in the past 24 or so hours. I hope you're all having an amazing day. We're going to be kicking this video off with several pieces of AMD news, the first of which is an exclusive and concerns the IPC improvements of the Zen 3 processor architecture compared to Zen 2. So what we know officially for Zen 3, of course, is it launches next year and will be a part of several product lines, including the Ryzen 4000 series, and it will be produced on TSMC's 7nm Plus process, which means that we will see 15 to 20% improvements in density, power reduction, and so on. Officially, AMD have also confirmed a few details of the architecture. I don't think it was meant to be public because the conference that AMD were attending and provided insight to the Zen 3 architecture at, it was recorded as a video and then put on the internet, but it was quickly removed from the channel or made private, but folks including myself had downloaded that video. The TLDR of that was that we learned that the nature of a CCX is being radically changed with Zen 3. Essentially, right now a CCX is comprised of 4 processor cores with 16 megabytes of level 3 cache. So that's kind of similar to previous architectures from AMD Zen, for example, although the amount of level 3 cache, of course, for Zen 2 was doubled. What was new, though, is we saw the chiplet design. So 2 of these CCXs form one chiplet. So we have 8 cores. Of course, that's capable of 16 threads and 32 megabytes of level 3 cache per chiplet, and then multiple of those chiplets come together to form a larger product. For example, the 3950X has 2 chiplets, which is 16 cores and 64 megabytes of level 3 cache. With Zen 3, this is changing because essentially what we have is that the cache is unified, and it looks like the 8 CPU cores of the CCX essentially are now just one and the same. So it looks like they're basically unifying those 8 cores, and they're no longer being segmented into 4 core CCXs. So you can basically, if you want it simplified, think of it as the CCX is now the chiplet. That's probably the easiest way of describing it. And they also confirmed that we will potentially see large amounts of cache for level 3. Phew! Okay, so getting on to the new information. One of my sources who's been very accurate in the past actually messaged me and wanted to give me a little bit of insight into what he's heard regarding the IPC gains of Zen 3, as there has been a lot of speculation online. Some people assume we're going to see a very similar jump to what we saw with, let's say, Zen Plus to Zen 2, where others feel that it's going to be a small incremental upgrade. So let's say Zen to Zen Plus, maybe 2 to 3%, maybe a little bit more. Well, he told me that we're looking at least 8% IPC gains. He actually said it could be more than that, but they're still testing things out internally. Furthermore, he also gave me a link to a Chip Hell forum post. And in this post, a well-known member there by the name of Zoo also said that the early engineering sample processors are running between 100 to 200 megahertz faster than what we saw with the Zen 2 CPUs. Now, the reason this is quite important is because early engineering samples aren't exactly the best candidates for highly clocked silicon, and that's putting it extremely mildly. So there is potential there to see maybe a couple of hundred extra megahertz on final production chips. I am not saying that we're going to see 5 gigahertz with Zen 3. I wouldn't be surprised maybe if certain chips do hit 5 gigahertz, but that's just pure speculation on my part based upon what I'm hearing with the early engineering samples. And actually, Zoo's post was also backed up by another post about a month or so back, if memory serves, where someone else said that early engineering sample Zen 3 processors were actually running extremely well and were also getting already into Windows, so they were able to boot Windows and run basic applications. So my source pretty much confirmed what Zoo said. For obvious reasons, I can't reveal much more about my source, but they have been very accurate in the past with information, so I'm going to be very curious to see what we see with the Zen 3 processor architecture. It will also mark the final series of CPUs where we have forward/backwards compatibility with not only the server-side offerings, but also AM4. Don't forget, AMD back in 2017, prior to the launch of the AM4 platform, said that they will be maintaining socket compatibility until next year. So basically, a Ryzen 4000 series CPU, theoretically, should run on any X370 motherboard, but of course it will also be down to the motherboard vendor to put the to provide an updated BIOS and so on and so on. So if you happen to buy a motherboard from a company that no longer supports that motherboard, well, obviously that's a bit of a different story. However, we still have more AMD news, and this one comes to us via Twitter, via a post from Kumichi on there. And he has confirmed that with driver entries regarding the Arcturus graphics card, it seems to be based on an architecture designed squarely under artificial intelligence acceleration. This makes a lot of sense. We've learned that Arcturus is essentially an evolved variant of Vega, but with some caveats, primarily that it lacks the IP blocks to do things that, well, a graphics card can do. You know, like display images. But on a serious note, it is basically an ASIC that's designed to accelerate AI. And this actually ties in very well to a leak that I had, I believe it was back in March. The same source had told me that AMD want to create ASICs for accelerating different workloads, and obviously artificial intelligence is, well, a market which is extremely lucrative. This is one of those products which is probably not going to benefit us directly as a consumer, unless obviously that's your thing and you really love doing like work with AI or work in HPC, in which case I'll be curious to hear from you when this product launches next year, which is when it looks like it will, on your thoughts of it. But it will of course benefit us in terms of hopefully bringing down the cost of servers for companies and obviously making it more affordable, which directly does impact us. And you never know what AMD learned from the research and development of such products, which does kind of trickle into consumer grade products. We don't know, for example, if, say, the second or third generation of Navi cards, assuming there is a third generation of Navi, it could be called Tooth Fairy for the third generation for all we know. We never know what they're going to take from what they've learned from Arcturus and then incorporate that into a gaming product. We still have a couple of more stories to get through, the first of which concerns Intel and their Xe graphics. So, it's common knowledge by now that Intel will be launching their discrete range of GPUs next year, and it was also hinted by Raja Koduri that there will be some type of announcement coming in June with a number plate of all things. The number plate read June 2020, and also, of course, the most prominent thing was Think Xe, which is obviously, well, reference to the GPUs. So it's possible that Raja Koduri was just teasing/trolling us. It was also possible that they were teasing an announcement of products or maybe an in-depth rundown of what we were going to be expecting from Intel graphics. And the other possibility is that it was the launch of certain products from Intel graphics. Well, a little birdie whispered to me that he believes it's actually the release of certain Intel Xe discrete GPUs for June. He believes it may only be the lower end SKUs, so these would be cards which would be definitely sub $200, maybe even considerably cheaper than that, and aiming primarily at the esports titles kind of scene. So 1080p, 60 FPS, and rather cheap, and allegedly anyway, it really wants to eat into the lower end cards that Nvidia have on offer. Once again, he's not 100% certain on that, but it's certainly something that he has heard, so it's going to be kind of interesting to see if it is. If not, personally, I do believe that Raja is someone who would not just tease this for no reason. I think we're either going to see a launch, or we are going to get a much more thorough understanding of what the heck actually Intel are planning with the Xe range. We also have two other pieces of news to cover. The next one is also Intel, but this one comes to us via a leak which was found by Tum-Apisak. And it's actually really good news. Tum-Apisak has discovered a Sys Sandra entry, and it is for Intel's Comet-like range of processors, which appear to be launching next year, early next year. This particular CPU, actually I'm really happy to have that he's discovered, because it's an i3-10100, and it is a 4-core, 8-thread processor. It has a base frequency of 3.6 GHz and 6 megabytes of level 3 cache. Regular viewers will know that I speculated Intel will have hyperthreading on a lot more of their Comet Lake SKUs than what they have in the past, because it just is something they're forced to do by AMD. Think about it. The Ryzen 5 3600 is like a couple of $100 and is 6 cores, 12 threads. Intel just cannot launch a 4-core, 4-thread processor, which is even remotely in the same price range as what AMD would be charging for the 3600. It needs to have 6 cores, 12 threads, 8 cores, 16 threads, and of course 10 cores, 20 threads for the highest end SKU, and also crank up the clock frequencies as high as humanly possible. This is speculation on my part, but I do wonder if Intel are also going to enable overclocking on a lot more SKUs. That's obviously something else AMD have been doing, and is definitely a feather in AMD's cap. So once again, Intel may be forced to do it with more of the processor SKUs, which is obviously just going to benefit us. As for other details of Comet Lake, there's still not that much known regarding clock frequencies. I have heard that they do run a little faster than what we have with, let's say, the 9900K, with the equivalent number of cores active, but obviously that's not known yet, and we've also seen that it appears to be 125 watt TDP. And in the final piece of news for today, Nvidia. Yes, we've gone through all of the 3 big players in this video, haven't we? And this information comes to us via medium.com. I will, of course, link them in the description of this very video. And Nvidia have been, well, just known for graphics, right? Their GPUs, actually, it's the 20th anniversary of Nvidia launching the GeForce 256 today, which is, I don't know how the hell 20 years has passed, but yeah, I'm not going to think about that one too much. And obviously that was the world's first GPU, which was capable of running triangle and lighting calculations directly on the graphics card rather than palming them off to the CPU. But there is one thing that both AMD and Intel have over Nvidia, and that is that obviously those two companies have the ability to produce CPUs as well. I don't want to get into AMD versus Intel here, but essentially you can think of both of those companies quite equal in that they can produce a processor which has an iGPU on there, and they can offer a lot of custom solutions to clients because of that, and so on and so on. Whereas Nvidia just don't have that. Well, it looks like Nvidia are going to be spreading its wings, because there have been several job listings by Nvidia which are looking for RISC-V engineers. Is a freely available open source microprocessor instruction set architecture, also known as ISA, and in the last couple of years it's also been gathering a lot of popularity and attention in the industry, and Nvidia are actually one of the stakeholders. Anyway, as I mentioned, there are several job listings in relation to RISC-V. One of those is Senior CPU Architecture for RISC-V/Security, Senior Video Codec Architecture Engineer, Senior Video Codec IC Design Engineer, Senior CPU Design Engineer for RISC-V/Security, Senior IC Verification Engineer, Image Processing, and Senior IC Verification Engineer. Furthermore, in the job applications it said applicants should have an in-depth understanding of the application scenarios of different subsystems of Nvidia GPUs and define the architecture for a Nvidia RISC-V processor. And some of these have been posted on LinkedIn, and Nvidia are also seeking a senior CPU design engineer candidates who can, quote, participate in the design and implementation of Nvidia's next generation RISC-V CPU for security. I find Nvidia doing this just makes a lot of sense given the pressure that they're going to be facing not just from AMD now, but also Intel, who are going to be jumping into the GPU arena. It's going to be fascinating over the next couple of years what actually comes of this and what type of architectures that Nvidia will be planning to launch. It's something that I will be keeping a very close eye on, and I will probably be doing a more in-depth analysis when we start hearing some leaks. Then again, Nvidia have been really good at holding back the leaks recently. I have heard very little from Ampere from all of my sources, and it looks like it's that architecture that Nvidia have managed to keep very tightly under wraps. Anyway, with all of that said, thank you very much for watching the video. I'm also extremely thankful for everyone who has been passing me tips and leaks, because no one has any obligation to do so, and I'm extremely grateful for your time. But with all of that said, I wish you an amazing day. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.